The first reading from the book of Revelation is in place because it's the liturgical year and it's coming to an end. Very soon we'll be celebrating the Feast of Christ the King, which ends the liturgical year, and then of course Advent begins, the whole new liturgical year. And the cycle will be a cycle because we've been in C cycle. So the book of Revelation is placed in the lectionary these weeks before the end of the liturgical year as a way of reminding us the direction that we should be going into. This section from the book of Revelation continues the revelation that John, the author, is having from an angel. And the angel says to John, "Write this down." And among the things he writes down are the section that Victoria read. And I love this phrase, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, then I will enter his house and dine with him, and he with me." It's exactly what Jesus did today in the gospel with Zacchaeus. You got to understand, well, we do understand. Zacchaeus was a tax collector, and he was a wealthy man. The two of them together probably meant he skimmed off the top of the taxes. And one, that he was a Jew, handling Roman taxes meant that he was shunned by the Jews because the Roman taxes had the image of the emperor. And an image to the Jews was prohibited. You couldn't worship anything that had an image on it. So the fact that Zacchaeus, a Jew, was handling this money condemned him religiously by the other Jews. So there's this animosity. And he's a little guy, they say. He was short of stature. And when I was in the Holy Land in 2019, they brought us to Jericho and to either the tree that he climbed up or the roots of that tree that's grown since then. And it was a big tree. And you could see little Zacchaeus climbing up the tree to see Jesus because the crowd was so intense. And Jesus looks up and says basically what this section of the book of Revelation says: "I'm coming to your house, and I'm going to dine with you." The book of Revelation says, "I'm always standing outside your door, and I'm always knocking, and I'm waiting for you to respond to me. And as soon as you respond, I'm entering." So time-wise, that was well after Jesus, maybe even 80 years after this happened with Zacchaeus. So Jesus looks up to Zacchaeus and says, "I'm going to come into your house. I'm going to dine with you today." Now that was not an imposition. That was normal Semitic culture. To when someone welcomes you, it's like mikasa sukasa. I open my doors to you. Whatever you want is yours to eat and relax and so on. So Jesus knew that if he knocked on Zacchaeus' door emotionally, Zacchaeus would welcome him. So he says to Zacchaeus, I want to stay with you. I want to eat with you. Now, there it is, the knock. And that knock is for all of us, not just Zacchaeus. The fact that we're winding down liturgical year, good for us to look back on our year, look forward to where we're going. Always willing to open the door for Jesus, always willing to open the door where he is in our lives, not only our homes. I'm not talking that narrowly. Jesus is waiting to come into our lives more and more each day. And we come to church, we pray, we receive the Eucharist, which is great, but Jesus is still coming into our lives in other places. Maybe as we care for one another, maybe as we care for the poor, maybe as we simply travel to and from home and are polite to people. Of course, the obvious are, especially during this season of giving, the most obvious is giving to the poor and food collections and so on. But that goes on all year. This is a reminder that here and now, Jesus is knocking on the doors of our hearts. When I was a kid, I lived in Jersey City, and we had a 3-family house. We lived on the first floor, and the friends who lived on the second floor were the Del Giudices. If you said it in Italian, Del Giudice, which means their ancestors were probably lawyers, or Jews, Del Giudice. So, but it was, the kids were Pepe and Billy and Roma. They were the kids, and parents were Billy and Joe. But they were Protestant. I say that because that's a world apart for us. We were very Catholic. We had a statue of Mary out front. The house is full of statues. But they didn't believe in statues, okay? But over Josie's bed, and you walk through the house, the apartment, and you see it, there was an image of Jesus knocking on a door. Never understood what that meant. Not only did I never understand what it meant, I thought it was a Protestant picture, because it was in a Protestant's house. How narrow-minded, but, naive. I was a child. So I said, well, whenever I saw that picture somewhere, I would think, that's a Protestant picture. There's no Protestant or Catholic pictures of Jesus. They're pictures of Jesus based on the artist who paints them. So I read this section of the book of Revelation, and my mind goes back to Josie's house, and they were wonderful people, wonderful neighbors, and that picture of Jesus. The knock wasn't on their door. The knock was on the door of all of us, the doors of our hearts. Jesus wants to come in. Well, you say, well, I received communion, so I have Jesus. He wants to come in more. He wants to come in through our confidence that he's in our lives. He wants to come in through the confidence that we pray and our prayers are effective. Later on today, Jerry will be going to Caitlin's funeral, wake actually, we'll be going to the funeral tomorrow. And little Caitlin, who was 18 years old, had Down syndrome. So she's been ill all her life, compared to an average person. Maybe to her family she wasn't ill, she was Caitlin, that's it, she was the kid. But we prayed for her for a few weeks, and she eventually passed, and she died with leukemia. And God is knocking on our door tomorrow as the family gathers to present her to heaven eternally. He's knocking on our door to remind all of us that when you pray, I'm listening. I'm on the other side. You just knock and I'm there. And he never abandons us. But you say, well, she died. She's only 18. She died. He didn't abandon us. He heard our prayers and did what's best for her. We suffer. I don't know the family that well, but Jerry's family. And the family suffers the loss. But our faith as Catholics says she's in the arms of Jesus. He knocked, she answered. And we're all there, lined up behind her. And we all should be ready to answer. Sometimes it's in debt. Sometimes it's in healing. Sometimes it's in charity. There are so many ways we can answer the door when Jesus knocks. So each day, go into our hearts, go into our minds, and how am I responding to Jesus, I have to ask myself. How am I being a good Catholic as I look forward to the beginning of the new year, Advent, but even as I'm here and now, today? How am I being an appropriate Catholic, a Christian who really believes that Jesus is knocking and it's up to me to answer?